In the meantime, we have to start, most unusually for us, on what looks suspiciously like good news. Steady on, everybody. But on page 2 of today's paper, it's revealed that we may be inching closer to a pay deal for the very many NHS staff who have been on strike. Jason, can you take us through this? Is there really light at the end of the tunnel?
From what I've heard, Susie, the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, has been trying to get money from the Treasury for some time to resolve this. He realises how damaging it is. They particularly want to deal with the nurses because the Tories went into this thinking with a kind of slightly Thatcherite mentality, we're stand up to the strikers, we're come down heavy on these unions, bringing the country to a halt, and then found actually the public opinion, as poll after poll showed, that there was a lot of sympathy for the nurses. Having realised this, Barclay was then told to try and resolve it after having originally refused to talk, which we'll come back to. Now, there's two major questions here. One, can he get the money out of the Treasury? And if he can't get the money out of the Treasury, where does it come from? So if it's going to come from within the NHS budget, that's very good for nurses who deserve a pay rise. As we've reported frequently, or their salary is at a time of major kind of cost of living crisis is not sufficient. They are using food banks. They are unable to afford to drive to work. They can't put food on their children's table. The case is quite clear why they need a pay rise. By comparison with nurses in almost every other major European country, they're paid extraordinarily badly. So can they get the money? And if it comes from the NHS budget, does that mean it comes from elsewhere? And does that mean they're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul?
Exactly. What is the NHS budget not being used to pay for if it's funding the nurses?
Yeah. If they start taking it away from other services, that's problematic. So everything will be about the kind of the resources. Then you come back to this issue, which I kind of briefly raised, of why didn't they do this earlier?
Exactly. It kind of wonders why they're doing it now. What do you think, everybody? Do you think that this is the right thing to do and they must come to a deal? But where do you want that money to come from? Do you want it to come from existing NHS budgets, which, as Labour pointed out yesterday, has had 144,000 cancelled appointments and surgeries because of the strike action, and which they have to find a way to catch up with, as well as all the pandemic backlogs. Because, of course, the government has been refusing to discuss this for months and months, as you said, Jason. So that's why the strikes went ahead. We had nurses, physiotherapists, ambulance drivers, paramedics, midwives, and all these cancellations. Is that what made the government change its mind? The fact that you mentioned that it was they retained public support, but also that the backlog was just getting worse and worse and worse, or was it the fact that the junior doctors and now even the consultants are balloting to join the strike action?
Well, if we look at it from I'll try to do this, it's quite hard, but we look at it from a Tory point of view.
Go on, Jason.
I'm going to do my best. It's a very murky world, and it's not much fun doing this deep dive. But the sake of your programme, I'm going to have a go, Susie. So if you look at it from a Tory point of view, they came from what I said, from kind of this kind of like very kind of traditional Thatcherite way of thinking, we stand up to unions because we look tough and it plays well with our audience. That didn't work. There's also an element of they were concerned that if they give ground with one union, then they have to give ground to the others. Now, what they're trying to do here is a little bit of divide and rule. So solve the nurses, but not necessarily solve the other pay disputes. That, again, could prove to be problematic long term. Let's see.
Yes, well, we'll have to find out, won't we? It will become clear, I'm sure, in time. But, how they're going to actually fund it, I think, is the important thing, because previous nurses' pay rises, which were below inflation, they came from the existing budget, which has led to some of the problems that we've got right now. I think the one that Rishi Sunak ordained as Chancellor was from the existing budget. Now, Marco says the local elections are coming up, so hey-ho, let's shake the money tree. You cynic, Marco. You cynic. Even we haven't suggested that, and we are lifelong career journalists. Maybe Marco's the editor in disguise. Who knows? But yes, there are local elections in May. They don't want strike action going over that time, do they? So maybe that's also played into their thinking. They've got enough problems coming up for the local elections. I suspect there's going to be some other sudden policy announcements just before May to try and move things on a little bit. We'll have to see how it all goes. But the RMT has also suspended strikes at Network Rail, so that's another bit of good news because they've got a deal edging a bit closer as well. But there is still an ambulance strike on March the 20th, so put a big red dot in your calendars, everybody, and don't fall over on March the 20th. Now, keep asking us your questions. What do you think about all these pay deals edging closer? Does it show that strike action works, or does it show that the government has been held to ransom by militant lefties? Do let us know.